Winter can be sometimes a very harsh season. Blizzard storms and extremely cold temperatures can lead to the deaths of many. That's what the French learned in 1812 and the Germans in 1941. Even the peoples of Middle-earth, some more than others, learned this on several occasions. These occasions were the three fell winters, calamities who swept from the north, bringing death and starvation to both good and bad folks. In this video we take a look at them and try to answer the question, were Morgoth and Sauron responsible for them? The first fell winter happened in Beleriand during the First Age. The snows began to fall in November of 495 and the winter lasted until March of the following year. It was said to be a very harsh winter, with snow and ice coming from the north. This happened straight after the fall of Nargothrond, one of the greatest elven realms, and the winter would claim the lives of many elves who escaped the destruction of their city into the wild. The winter also hindered the journeys of Túrin back to his home of Dorlomin and of Túr and Voronwe to Gondolin. However, it was not enough to stop them from reaching their goals. Eventually, when spring came, the elves of Nargothrond made their way to Doriath, and both Tuor and Túrin were able to finish their journeys even before the winter's end. Out of the three fell winters, this one did the least damage to Middle-earth. A winter as harsh and as cold as this would not happen until the Third Age. In 2758 the long winter hits, and will last for 5 months. Prior to the winter, Rohan had been invaded by the Dunlendings and Easterlings, and overrun. Edoras had been captured, and King Helm Hammerhand was forced to retreat into the Sufberg, later known as Helm's Deep. Meanwhile, Gondor had been attacked by the corsairs of Umbar, and was unable to help Rohan. In Rohan, both the Rohirrim, who had taken refuge into the valleys of the White Mountains, as well as their enemies, faced starvation, and thousands of them perished. In the Sufberg, Hama, Helm's son, leads the company out of the fortress to search for food. The company is lost in the snow and are never seen again. With the death of his last son, Helm begins to grow gaunt and would venture out of the Sufberg to ambush the Dunlendings. During one of these ambushes, Helm freezes to death. Meanwhile, to the north, the hobbits of the Shire also faced starvation, as the winter came upon them, and many of them died. For half a year, the hobbits and Rohirrim were forced to endure this winter. Out of all the fell winters, this one did the most damage. Finally, the snows melted and spring came. In Rohan, Frealof, Helm's nephew, managed to retake Edoras, and with help from Gondor, who had defeated the corsairs, he drives the Dunlendings and Easterlings away. Gandalf the Grey comes to the aid of the hobbits during the winter, and he discovers their courage and pity. The effects of the long winter can be seen thousands of years later. The Dunlendings would never recover, and only played a minor role in the War of the Ring. It took the Rohirrim 200 years to regain their strength, and Gandalf's experience would result in him choosing Bilbo for the quest of Erebor. The last great winter was the second fell winter, which began in 2911. This was less harsh, as the snow and ice stopped in Eriador at the river Guaflo and in Rovanion in the middle of Mirkwood. Nevertheless, there were several problems, as food again ran short in the Shire, and the hobbits were attacked by white wolves from the north. Gandalf and the rangers had to provide food for the hobbits and help them against the wolves. The winter came to an end in 2912, and great floods rushed down the river Guaflo, and the city of Tarbad, which stood as the only city in that region, was ruined and its bridge broken. The people of Enedwaith and Minhiriath also suffered greatly, as their lands were flooded. These 3 winters caused much death. The long winter alone might have claimed as many as 10,000 lives. As such, there arises the question, were Morgoth and Sauron responsible for the fell winters? Well, in the first stage, it was said that as Morgoth's power grew, the winters became harsher, and when Morgoth was the greatest of the Valar, his main domain was fire and ice. However, at the time of the first fell winter, Morgoth's power was dispersed into his servants, and Morgoth himself was a shadow of his former self. As for Sauron, he was a people of Aule the craftsman, so he would have little to no influence on the weather. As such, the Dark Lords may not have had anything to do with the fell winters. And there is something else. The winter affected the Free Peoples just as much as it affected their enemies. In fact, I would go as far as to say that it helped the Free Peoples and that without the winters they would have been in a much worse position. The fell winter of the First Age did hinder Tuor's journey to Gondolin, but it also helped him at not attracting Morgoth's attention. The orcs were too busy trying not to freeze than to hunt for him. The long winter prevented the Dunlendings from taking the valleys of the White Mountains and gave Gondor time to defeat the Corsairs before sending aid to Rohan. It also resulted in Saruman receiving Isengard from Gondor. And if not for the fell winter of the Third Age, then Gandalf would not have discovered just how brave the hobbits could be. So, the three fell winters led to the deaths of thousands through freezing and starvation and almost wiped out the Rohirrim and hobbits. But they also did help our heroes indirectly. Tuor's arrival in Gondolin, Saruman receiving Isengard and its Palantir, and Gandalf growing closer to the hobbits. All of this could not have happened without them. In Tolkien's works, nature has a will of her own, helping the Free Peoples. The ants and eagles help them through direct physical intervention. But the fell winters did aid them in the long run, although at first it did not appear so. Before I end this video, I want to wish you all a happy Christmas and a great new year.